How did you feel about this fight? What's the overall consensus?
For me, really fun to figure out, although I felt like this was very, very easy to problem solve. It was more of like I like that it was more of like a very simple damage check fight, and like you just needed to learn the combos. I think this fight made us think a lot more about like damage reduction, because like what we were doing a lot early on was we were using our like raid CDs for like entropy, because it was just this giant hit. And I think you can use some things for entropy, but where we saw a lot of like big growth fast was saving our like tank bigger like raid externals for like the lineups where there's like the raid soak right after the corners or whatever, right? So like just noticing spots that don't necessarily do more damage but are just more lethal, right? I think this fight showed more than anything else, and I'm sure some fights in this game will be like that, where you problem solve it and then it just kind of takes a long time to be able to do it consistently, which was like a little frustrating. But
this one is a good example of the grind that you get into, the execution grind, just to get the kill. Like, you've got everything figured out, it's just a matter of actually doing it. And I think it's actually done in a really healthy way in this fight particularly, where it's not a super tight check that you need to like play perfectly to beat. It's a don't fuck up check, because it's the damage downs that get you in the end.
Yeah, I was actually surprised how little of a damage check it was, because like our pull was fucking awful. Like it was not good, and we still like shredded it.
You guys are actually pumping towards the end of the day there, or the end of your pulls today on E2. Your damage has increased significantly across the last 24 hours.
Overkilling that boss.
Yeah.
You were really far ahead. It was good.
Okay, so like, I guess we'll talk about it just from the beginning. I think this is the kill. Oh no, it isn't.
Oh no.
I just wanted to say that this boss threw me off a couple of times, specifically because that boss doesn't have like a very clear distinction of a face. Like it's just one thing with the same mechanics. It's just like they go off differently when he has like the clock stuff up. Yeah, and then sometimes you're in the middle of the boss fight and you don't know, okay, what's gonna happen next? Like, where am I exactly in this boss fight right now? And then you just, you know, like you're thrown off because you don't know in which position you're supposed to be in next or whatever. I think that was like the biggest thing for me. That was.
There's a few bosses like this throughout Final Fantasy, and the best piece of advice I can give for dealing with a boss like this, where everything kind of just gets lost in the sauce, is to timeline early. To create a written timeline of every mechanic in order, even if it's like really quick, a couple words, it'll definitely help. Like,
yeah,
massively. In a fight like this, it's a big deal,
because
there's no visual change either to the arena or anything like there are in other fights.
Yeah, exactly. I was just gonna bring that up. Like I feel like so many fights have visual changes and it changes what you know is coming next. And this one, it just literally looks the same. That is something, especially in my role, that I found challenging. In fact, before this turned into a 10-minute fight, and you were just learning all the combos for the first 6 minutes. In the first 6 minutes, I was like really accurate. And I actually always knew what was coming next. We made really quick progression. And then as we got better at the fight and we got longer, consistently longer pulls, I actually got so much worse at those first 6 minutes, because I couldn't remember if it was like the last part or like the first part. Like I actually was, I don't think I'm stupid, but like I literally fucking I could not remember where I was in this fight like most of the time.
I'm with you there, as evidenced by last night, me dying all the time. Oh, it was so bad. It just like seems to melt your brain after a minute.
It does, and it's because it uses not really that many mechanics at its core, but it puts them all together in different ways each time that it presents them to you.
Yeah, it's always like a different combo. It's very similar to Artificer, I guess, where you have like you have this combo and then you have that combo, and maybe we just should give each combo like a name, or we'd call it out first. Where you say, okay, this is the flare into like blah blah blah, and then it would be a lot clearer for people to remember what part we're in. Maybe like write it down somewhere and then call it out. I don't know.
You're talking like safe words.
Exactly.
Dude, okay, what if we actually did that? Like, what if we said this is turnip, and then after a certain amount of time, you know, turnip is like the thing where you get in front of the boss with Shadow Eye, and turnip is so much different than like watermelon, you know? And like once you hear watermelon, you're like, oh dude, there's not even a fucking Shadow Eye in watermelon. That's fine.
I like it.
We could do something like that. Yeah, something like that'll definitely be really good. So the tank mechanic, this was like a very basic tank mechanic. This fight had like, there was no debuff or anything. Like you could actually like just have one tank like basically tank the entire time if it wasn't for like optimal positioning. outside of the fact that obviously a second person would need to eat Shadow Flame. So I thought the complexity of tanking this fight was much less.
I think it's because this fight forces you to be involved in specific mechanics more often as a tank than perhaps E1 did, but it's pretty generally considered that it's a pretty boring tank fight.
I had like this was
in terms of
super
tanking
boring to tank for me.
responsibilities. Yeah,
I didn't.
you don't
do
actively
anything,
have to
pretty much.
do any tanking. Yeah.
Oh, I only taunted him and maxed out a debuff pretty much.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of things that you could have done outside of that, like when the flares go on one tank, the one tank vokes off and keep it center and all that sort of stuff.
did
but
that.
Like,
Yeah, that's what I
ultimately-
tried to.
Yeah.
We tried to do.
Yeah, that stuff is just that's
It's just
not
optimal
very
positioning if
active and involving.
possible. Okay, so entropy, does this signal that the hand is coming out, or it signals like a new phase, kind of? Or is it just ray
It's-
damage?
it's just ray damage. You can kind of break the fight down into entropy sections, but it's not super consistent. It's more there to break up the fight, I think, is what its function is from like a design philosophy. But it is kind of an empty mechanic.
Is there any like better, like way better positioning strat for this fight? I feel like we just felt like this was the most simple way to do it with cleaver and, well, obviously like we didn't know about the combo in the last phase when we made it, but like I think we kind of problem solved that pretty well. We just had a really hard time executing it.
This boss is like, in terms of tanking, the most difficult part of this is the boss positioning and boss facing also. Keeping that really consistent makes a big difference here.
Yeah.
Just because, you know, things like a guillotine being off center can just catch people off guard. You know, it's just lots of little things that can be caused by problems with that, especially where the, as you call them, dogs spawn, can just create problems.
What do you call them?
We call them the boys.
That's a good name.
Yeah.
I fuck with that hard.
But in terms of other tanking stuff, like, yeah, there really isn't a lot going on. So it's just pump. And the tank busters are pretty uninspired.
Oh, so flare. We decided to stay in the middle, but I think you would have taken slightly less damage by inching more towards the corner that doesn't have one in it. Is that
Okay,
what anyone does?
So I'll tell you how flares functions in the pug strat and how everyone does it these days. So did
Okay.
you ever clue into the fact that it's always one tank, one healer, one DPS that get them in each set?
Yeah.
So you have allocations for those.
Yeah.
So you have in your, like, can you pause so I can see where your markers are real quick?
Sure. Yeah. Well, this
So you
is
see
a
you've got
terrible time
B
to...
and- So your B and A are on one side of the arena,
Yep.
right? So you'd have, say, a healer on B, tank on A, and then the DPS would be everyone and the other tank, and the other healer would be on the wall next to one.
Whoa,
So I've-
whoa, dude. You just fucking talked circles around me. I have no fucking clue what you just said.
So we're
Okay,
all
so-
lined up on one side of the room, pretty much.
No, so you have...
Oh!
Yeah, because I talked about this
Yeah!
with chat a bit, and a WoW thing is that raid healing doesn't hit everyone in the raid, and you didn't consider this for a couple of things in this. If one DPS is taking damage and you're going to be AoE healing anyway, you may as well put that damage on the raid if the tanks aren't in danger of dying. So you could have given everyone, except for the tank and the healer going out to place their flares, full uptime on the boss, while just stacking as far away from them and making a big faraway triangle. So you take the minimum damage from those ones at A and B.
Okay.
Yeah, hopefully that makes sense. And it's
Yeah.
also another thing with the Darkfire 3. I've noticed that Ninja Max has been having to disengage from the boss and people running away from it, whereas you can just have one of those hit everyone on the group because you're going to be AoE healing anyway. This just seems like a WoW tendency to try to avoid all and any damage possible, but in Final Fantasy, it's like, if you're going to be AoE healing anyway, it doesn't actually matter if it doesn't kill anyone.
Oh, that's really interesting, because healing in WoW, or healing in this game, is so powerful that if you're going from 100 to 40% or 100 to 20%, it literally doesn't matter. It's the difference in, like, maybe not even it changes the amount of casts you do. That's what you're
Correct.
saying?
And it's not only that, but it's also like,
Dude, that's so
if you're
different.
if you've got 4 people being knocked to 40% and the other 4 people being knocked to 80% and taking the minimum
You're casting the
damage,
same amount of spells. Yeah, I totally
you're
get it.
still AoE healing.
Yeah, dude, that is fucking fascinating. That is so different, by the way. I mean, there's definitely some things like that in WoW, but that is not how we are programmed to think at all. That's
Wait, what did he do? I didn't listen.
He's saying like a strat they did here was actually like not as efficient for like damage reduction per se, but it's because and they were able to like keep uptime more for DPS. So like basically their strat instead of everyone going down to 40% by optimal like reduction positioning, you can increase uptime by not moving off the boss as much, and going to 20% and going to 40% are the same thing. As long as you're routinely not going to die, the healers are basically casting the same amount of spells. If you're reducing on extra people in this game, it doesn't matter. There's no healing profiles that we're using, at least right now, that would effectively heal half the raid being at 80% and half the raid being at 40%. The reality is the healers are just AoE healing anyway. So like you would just optimize uptime to where those people at 80% can get more uptime in lieu of like reducing more damage, because literally
So for
nothing
that-
is changing with healing.
So you can like stand in fire as long as you don't die.
So for that
the
movement
healers
right
doesn't
there,
matter.
for that movement right there where you dodge the hand, you stay at the wall there outside 3.
Yeah.
And then DPS fall off damage stays there. The tank one goes to A, the healer one goes to B. And
Yeah.
everyone is now outside 3.
Yeah.
And you just sit there and do damn.
That's actually going to change a lot of how I think about doing mechanics actually in this game, knowing that, because that is so smart. Because it's also, I think it makes total sense too, because like I don't know how healing works in this game at all. Maybe knowing how healing works is important for me now, obviously in hindsight, but I also don't think there's any universe where I was gonna fucking look up how healers work. Fuck that.
I don't know, because my thought is always like the healers will go if they take too much damage, you know. But it literally doesn't matter.
Have you guys, the healers healed much like in WoW? I'm not sure if you guys experienced, so it's...
Well, healing and WoW in this game are like literally polar opposites. Right?
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
so different.
Right. So from what I've heard from everyone who has played both of them as a healer, is that Final Fantasy healers are just insanely good at healing people's HP bars. Like they're just
Yes.
way too good at it. So if you need to top people, you just can.
Yeah, the way I've heard about healing is it's like healing in this game is much closer to like a very simple rotation DPS class that presses buttons that you consider like your giant healing cooldowns. They just basically don't have a cooldown on them. They just require you to cast them. And like you just want to have them pre-casted to have healing happen like right after you're taking damage, but after that you're just maximizing the amount of time you're hitting the boss.
Yeah, it's the overall profile of a healer's output is hugely DPS like favored. Optimized healing in like really clean runs and speed kills and stuff like that is literally 0 GCD healing. It's all off globals because they're that strong. Yeah, that is absolutely not expected or even like realistic in progression, and it's like not a point you'll ever get to in a progression environment. But when you go for like complete optimization, that's the level that people get to because the healers are that good at healing HP.
Okay.
So you actually, oh, that's crazy. Yeah.
I want to watch before the quietest phase. Our like last. Oh no, this makes sense. It's just like we figured this out pretty fast. Okay, so I actually think we did really well on this cycle thing. I think we had the right idea. We were like, we almost got hard baited because like we were about to pull, and I think I remember saying the words, let's look at the animations to see if we can figure out what he's gonna do, which is like fucking no way, right? And then we realized on our second pull there that he casted 2 different things. Funny thing enough, if he would have casted Retribution first twice, we would have probably gotten hard baited. So like we actually got pretty lucky that he casted. Wait, does it alternate randomly?
Yes.
Okay.
So the first one that he does is always random.
Yeah,
The second one is the
is
opposite,
always
and
the
the third one's
opposite.
random.
Yep. Okay, so that was, yeah, I guess we just got really lucky that on 2 back-to-back pulls, he did one of each, because that was when we were doing our major decision making there, and we would have literally tried to do a strat based on his animations and miserably died.
So this actually gave me flash. Is you'll have, because they're always tanks into the wall and your E1S clear, and he said, all I looked at was the word pure and pure light and thought it was pure beam. Because apparently WoW players only ever look at the first word of a mechanic and then kind of just auto-complete the rest.
To be fair, there's
Pretty
never
much.
been a cast in WoW where it had the same first word as another cast, because
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest with
Also,
you,
like,
why would you
I
fucking do
recognize
that?
by icons, pretty much. Like, especially like in
Yeah,
like, when you see the
purely
icon,
icon.
that's like, oh, it's this one. I don't really read the name a lot of the time. Same with all my abilities. I never read. Like half my abilities. I don't.
Wait,
even
you have
think
an
I know what
icon?
they're called.
I don't have an icon. Hold up.
But not in Final. No, in WoW, not in Final Fantasy.
Oh yeah. Same, yeah.
Like it's half the abilities. I don't even know what they're called. I just see the icon. I'm like, oh, it's this one.
Wait, WoW abilities that the bosses use have icons?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They all have an icon, and you
Okay.
see the icon on your like DBM or whatever.
A lot,
Crazy.
And when they're doing a cast.
a lot of like WoW notifications you use, especially at a high level, are actually much less bars and much more icons and aural learning. So like on your, like by your ear. like memorizing and getting sounds to know that something is going to happen rather than seeing.
Yeah, yeah. No, I get it completely.
Like, so what you can do well with like weak for is that you set like a specific, whenever that ability is happening, I get a specific sound, and I know that I have one sound for like, you know, tank nukes. So whenever I hear that sound, I know it's, oh shit, it's a tank nuke.
Yeah,
You know what I
okay,
mean?
that makes
Even though
sense,
it's like a
yeah.
different ability, I just put the same sound to it. And then like for a stacking, I just have one sound.
Yeah, yeah. That's pretty cool, yeah.
What else is the last thing? So Quietus, I think we kind of got on early that like Quietus was kind of a soft enrage, because like pretty early on we saw that every time he casted it, he got the damage buff, right? So like
Yeah.
you figured a certain amount of those were going to be casted, and then you were just eventually not going to be able to live it anymore.
So, how did you feel about cycle snapshotting? Did you finally start to feel the Final
Dude,
Fantasy
I
gameplay?
think it's the pull right before this. I'm so glad you brought that up. It's the pull. I'm almost positive it's right before. It's the pull right before we killed it, where I had a snapshot of the fucking century. Was it the pull right before where we wiped?
You can be like halfway into an animation and just not take damage. It's just as long as you're feeling where it is.
I feel it on the damage numbers. I never really cared about like other people's buffs. And then like,
Oh, so I'm
I just
talking about
started doing it.
positional snapshotting.
oh, okay.
Not
yeah,
damage snapshotting. I'm talking about, yeah, when a cast bar finishes, and if you start moving just as it finishes, you can be like halfway into the boss's hitbox during the guillotine animation, right?
Yeah.
You guys missed the easiest like way to remember these, by the way.
Yeah.
Cycle of Retribution.
Was that supposed to mean something?
Retribution. Go in to the boss.
Oh.
And Chaos is out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would never do that.
No.
0 chance.
I would never do
What?
Yeah, literally
What?
no way.
It is by far the easiest way to remember.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, it makes sense now, but like in my like I would never think like that ever.
The same.
It's like
Yeah, no chance. It's definitely different. I actually like it because it's different, if that makes sense, because like it just forces you to play differently. This boss we're doing right now is a prime example. As a WoW player, it like breaks your fucking brain to have to be out of a reticle and then run face first into a giant mechanic. The joke I made before was like the animations in this game, like you can take like 5% of your health and like it looks like a building's falling on you and the whole room's exploding, and like you just run into it and it makes sense, and that's what you're supposed to do. It's very, very jarring as a WoW player to do that.
The one thing that really throws me off sometimes, like especially when we had to go together with the light and dark, is we're lagging so much between, like the position of the other players is lagging so much.
Yeah.
And
That's just a Final Fantasy thing. Where you see
Yeah.
someone on your team on the map at any point in time, they're always a little bit behind that. Or sorry, ahead of that. So I actually wanted to talk a little bit about your like paired allocations that you had, and another couple of allocations you set up for this, because I feel like there's definitely different ways or better ways that you could have gone about it. So typically the way that people deal with those in Final Fantasy, the light and dark stacks that you had, the equilibriums they're called, is you'll have, because they're always tanks and DPS, you will assign, all right, tanks are always standing still, DPS will stand on top of them and then go, right? Like you just set it to be that way so that only one person is ever moving for any situation where two people need to be stacked together. That just makes it far more consistent.
That's what we were
and
doing, right?
reliable.
Or
It may have been the goal, but it was not the result.
I think what was causing that was people very probably WoW mentality, maybe feeling like they needed to immediately go back behind the boss. That like, for example, the people on like yellow, red, blue, and purple could just always be there the whole fucking time unless you're soaking something, and that's like 3 times in the entire fight. But the default was just behind the boss for whatever reason.
well, you have positional things as like a melee, right? So you have to be hitting
Yeah.
the boss from like certain ways.
Yeah, we have the melee always directly behind though. So that makes sense. And also the melee moving to spots doesn't matter because like they can do all their shit while moving. So right after this, dude, am I crazy in this? I remember sprinting and feeling like I was a mile out of a thing and I got hit and my mouth was wide open. I don't know if you're watching my stream at the time, but like that is what I'm remembering. It's
Part of this fight is that the actual problem solving, there isn't little and there's very little strategy that has to go into it. Things are very kind of straightforward as to how they're supposed to be solved. So I feel like
there it is. Sorry, go ahead.
you found it. I feel like
Oh, yeah.
in terms of strategizing, this one probably would have felt a little empty for you guys. But it was a big execution check, and you guys felt that at the end of the first day you were progressing on it, for sure. I could tell that like there was almost a little bit of frustration, but you came back today and fucking smoked it.
The frustration for me comes from one spot. So I'm always intrigued, interested, and engaged when I'm constantly problem solving a mechanic. I have very little to no patience of having something problem solved and then failing to reach that point due to something completely different than the problem you should be facing at the moment. That is something I really struggle with. That's why I'm probably only good at raid leading a guild like Limit, because you know, you just surround yourself with like if I raid leaded a lower ranked guild, I think I would be fucking miserably bad. I have no patience for it. I think that's probably what that is. I can be better, but I should just challenge myself to be better about that though, and just know that there's going to be a lot of repeat mistakes, because like I'm trying to call things like way ahead of time. I'm taking a lot away from my personal play to make sure that I'm calling things like a lot. I don't know this, but I assume I'm probably calling more things out than what a normal Final Fantasy like shot caller would do. I could be totally wrong by that. But like I feel like a Final Fantasy player that's played for a while is probably much more used to like having a lot more personal responsibilities among players. I'm just used to doing that because of WoW and the way that WoW rating is.
I think that varies a lot group to group. I've been in groups where it's been complete opposite ends of that spectrum, right? I've been in groups where I've had people call everything as you do, and I've been in groups where there's like 3 words said across an entire raid night and then you leave. But I think across the general player base, it's probably true that you would be doing more than most people would from a call-out standpoint. Oh my goodness.
That, dude, I mean, literally look at my face. Look at my fucking face. I'm going to move my camera on stream. I sprint and everything, I'm pretty sure. If I remember. Cleaver happens, I sprint, I fucking run to the left. Dead.
Yeah.
Dude,
so that right there,
look at my face. I'm like, what?
So what the way that you should, I think, try to solve the snapshotting problem with those is, because you don't have cast bars in that phase, you get really used to the cast bars in the first phase, and you actively think about that, so then you can apply that knowledge based on when the cast bar applies to the animation.
Yeah.
About exactly when you can move, and then you relate those two things, and you use that as your like reference point of when you should be moving.
Yeah, I think on our kill, I like altered my thing, and I just pre-ran. I like pre-sprinted this time during the cleaver, if I remember, on our actual kill. And then I was like, I'm already out of this bitch. Like, I'm on the edge of the room. Fuck it, fucking uptime. I'm out.
Yep.
That is one thing too we figured out, is I think a lot of us got better at like, you know, greeting damage on a fight like this with your movement and positioning, and how not worth greeting is in progression. Like, think about the upside and downside. Like, let me give an example. Like my character, Retribution, is this a good one? No. It's line circle cleaver. That's the one where like the fucking uptime is misery. 1 second. Okay.
Cleaver and then
This
line.
like I think I get a damage down here actually. I like try to move out late, and it's just like every single time I need to like move out instantly. Like right now I have to move out. But like before the other lineups, I was used to like max melee hitbox, and I was very careful as a tank to not like greet it for myself, meaning like I would pull the boss towards me to over move. Like right here, I'm terrified of doing this. I'm terrified of sprinting through these 2 dogs to guarantee no damage down, because if the melee's doing the same thing, that guy gets fucked by me pulling the boss, right? So like,
yes,
that's why I was trying to be the person where like I was trying to get it perfect. But the reality is greeting anything results in a 30-second 50% damage reduction, and that is like the biggest punish of all time. So
we actually had my statics tank in the chat with us while you guys were doing this, and he was just going on about how this is like really frustrating to do on a tank, because there's so much you want to do but you just can't get away with it. He also didn't know that you could stand between the boys as they're in the line.
I found out by
which
accident.
you ended up doing.
I found out by accident. I think, at least for me, I'm really glad we did this boss, because while yes, we were struggling a bit on execution near the end, I think this allowed all of us a chance to do a single target boss and really just kind of focus on just fucking blasting the boss. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I feel like my damage from the beginning of this boss to after is much higher. I played our kill extremely well outside of the damage down at the end. I mean, we both did 8k, right? as tanks. That's got to be at
Yeah,
least
yeah.
okay.
You guys were doing actual good damage. Like you were 30 seconds ahead of reach there. The
Yeah.
first fight
Which
taught
was
you
very
guys introductory problem-solving stuff. This fight taught you guys introductory, just like doing damn on a you know, practically a dummy.
Are we
So
playing
it's
the highest damage dealing tanks, or like other tanks doing more? I think Gunbreaker is the best one, right?
Gunbreaker, I've heard,
Gunbreaker, yeah.
is the
More
highest.
instead of my.
I mean, I'm
my-
usually like right behind you, so if it's not
Yeah.
Dark Knight, then like I get what are there one or two more tanks?
2, right?
There's two more tanks here. There's Warrior and Paladin. Warrior, Paladin, and Dark Knight are pretty close. It all depends on the fight which one comes out ahead. Warrior is typically the bottom, but again, it's fight by fight. Paladin's pretty consistent. Dark Knight tends to do well in progression though because of the flexibility of its damage. So it, you know, they do well. But the tank comp that you're running is pretty meta. So
Oh, okay. I mean, yeah, this class is really fucking fun. Also, I
The one
find
thing,
what's
the
up?
one thing I didn't actually know about Embolden, that's like the buff I have, right? And in WoW, if you have some sort of buff like this, it's usually just like a really big range. But I didn't realize that it's actually just like close around me, like in a circle. So sometimes
Yes.
I would prop Embolden while having the flare all the way in the corner, and I literally just buff myself and no one else.
yep, everything does. The only
Yeah.
things that have the really big range that is like guaranteed to have everyone raid wide is tank limit break. That's kind of the only thing. Everything else
Oh,
you have to be
okay.
concerned about ranges. Oh, speaking of ranges, this is one thing I wanted to bring up because it's actually not brought up in game anywhere, and it's specific to Astro. Detmods, if you're listening, you know your collective unconscious, the bubble that you sit there and hold and just kind of T-pose for a while. That thing, if you tap it and you get the buff on everyone, that damage reduction will be there for 5 seconds. So you don't need to sit there and hold it.
Hey.
Oh.
Yeah. So
Is
hopefully
Datmod's
that
even here?
helps. I don't know. He's not muted. He's been deaf in the last couple times I've been in here, so hopefully
Yeah.
he heard that.
No, dude, I'm pretty sure he's out of here. Yeah, I think that guy's about to have a bab.
He is. He's gonna be a
Okay.
papa.
Yep.
Oh,
shit.
right. Cool.
Yeah, he hosted me, so he might be AFK actually, or raided me.
Yeah.
Alright, well, someone can tell him that next time you guys talk.
Yeah, we'll tell him.
Cool.
Did
Other stuff. I had actually a couple more things that I wanted to bring up.
Okay.
I feel like there were a couple of times throughout this fight where you understood the mechanics really well, but then you didn't make a couple of changes to make them easier to execute, such as things like for your soak positions, having people in positions which made it easier for everyone else. So because you've got a 5 ranged comp, right? You've got 2 casters, a fizz ranged, and 2 healers. You have a melee slot available for someone. That's just free because you got 4 spots around the boss. So putting a healer in that spot can make things way easier in terms of healing. And I also saw that it, like as you were getting towards this, the earlier pulls when you were getting the hell winds into the soaks, that people weren't able to heal. Like Cam's died like, like
Oh,
10
I mean,
times now.
then we were totally misunderstanding because I asked like a bunch of times if they were ever actually out of range of someone, and the answer was never yes. That's never said. So we kind of just went along the lines of like the soaks were designed to where everyone is in range of every soak, and we made our decision
Yeah.
based on that. But like I
So
think
the
our healers were
healing-
asking to go to the middle, so yeah.
Okay, yeah, the healers have range as well, like Nagura was just talking about on her Embolden. The healing GCDs, the AoE ones, also have the same effect. I think they're like 20 arms on average, 15 or 20. And you should probably get used to just playing around with that range.
I thought I should be melee as the 4th spot because of my melee combo, but I guess
It all depends on the situation, right? In a situation where you
Uh-huh.
have a lot of healing to be done there, then it's possible that it's better to switch it around.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's case by case. But it's just one of the things that you can consider as you do this. One of the other things that I think also led to poor Cam's dying there was both healers hitting the same target and just not having a priority system in place, going like top down or bottom up in the party list sort of thing. But I think one of the best things that you guys did was your VOD usage. And I think this is a direct carryover from WoW because you guys have a lot more preparation that you can put into these sorts of things. So your ability to capitalize on good footage is really, really good. And you showed that with everything that you saw from normal mode that carried over to Savage, you just blitzed through. The only time you guys ever actually stopped for more than like 2 minutes between pulls was when you actually saw the flares go out, which were the fall off damage, and when you got to cycles. That was it. Everything else was either an execution thing, and it was never a lack of understanding or strategizing around the things that you were seeing.
The only thing I feel regarding that is like, It feels like really pointless to go through a normal fight and then go into Savage, because I feel like everything's just different. Yeah, like you have some mechanics that
don't agree
did
at all.
something, but I feel like they're very different.
The thing with the Delta attack, for example, on the first boss, you don't see it so clearly on Savage because you don't have the indicators showing you exactly what happens, and the normal, most of the time you have them for a long time. And I only knew that because of normal mode. And the same with like the boss that we're doing right now with like the tsunami
Same.
debuffs.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, like
Yeah,
it-
yeah, but I'm saying more like talk about like a strat, about like go through every mechanic so people know what they're doing, but they're probably gonna be, different, so you're not making a strat around it.
Yeah,
I
it was
feel-
more that you had a solid understanding of how to implement those things because of your ability to, like, synthesize that information from the VODs that you were using was actually really impressive.
But also, no, I completely disagree with you. I think like my idea of like how the entire fight's gonna work or what things are gonna change later like actually really matters. Like if you just say no VOD review versus VOD review, looking at stuff later in a lot of ways in a normal fight can give you hints onto like what they intend to do the fight on Savage, and the guesses we've made on that for the first two bosses have actually been right. And I feel like it's
Yeah,
changed
but
the
I
way
feel
I
like
thought about doing mechanics.
it's better, like, look at the mechanics that we had in normal, and like, okay, so this does this, and then they're probably gonna be, it might be same, it might be different in Savage, but like, trying to like figure out stuff and talk about it for like 5-10 minutes instead of just going there and pulling and seeing it. At least for me, I'm a player who learns from like playing, and I'm not a player who learns from watching. But I guess we're different.
I think there's some benefit in entering a fight and just saying, let's start knocking this out one by one and learning combos and getting that stuff down. But I think knowing how you think the entire fight is going to work, I think going through our VOD of normal together before we start Savage, I think improves our idea of what that fight is going to be like a lot. I think it's really good.